from someone who looks out the window on Cornwall Bridge.
Yeah.
That's just not true.
I'm good.
Sorry I missed your book sale last Saturday.
Well, there'll always be another.
I didn't go out because of the little bit of snow we had.
Okay, so I'll call the meeting to order. First thing is approval of minutes of February 4, 5, 6, and 26. Is there a motion to approve those?
I move we approve the meeting notices for February 4, 5, and 26.
I'll second.
A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, addition to the agenda. I'll put legislation addition to the agenda. 'Cause it seems like that's a growing topic. We may want to take some action or not on some of those issues. So I have that to add to the agenda. Any other additions? All in favor of adding that to the agenda, say aye.
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 Any other any other additions? Communications?
Can I ask a question? Do
Sure.
you have any kind of handouts that could be seen or not, like with the budget or anything? I'm just curious, because I'm not sure how this works, that's why I'm here to learn.
Sure. The draft budget, as far as the town budget, will be on online
Okay.
once they present it. Once it gets going, so there'll be a draft budget definitely ahead of the budget hearing, which is in April, and the town meeting in May. So
Okay.
they generally don't do it. We've already presented our budget to the Board of Finance last week, and the school board is going to meet with the Board of Finance at CCS next Thursday at 7 o'clock, and then the Board of Finance meets the following Thursday, the 21st, at 7 o'clock here. So then they'll start seeing where things are at. So definitely it will be, once they get something workable, they'll do that. Any other public comments, communications?
I have a comment about the yield sign of Route 45. Is that going to become a stop sign now?
Yes.
Because myself and a couple of other neighbors came before you like circa 2000, around then, and you were adamant that a yield sign, we were asking for a stop sign at that time because it's such a treacherous intersection, and you were adamant that a yield sign carried more weight than a stop sign did, and that's why you wouldn't pursue it at that time. So I just want to know if you're going to address why this is happening now, who brought this forward,
Yep.
and
We'll
if there's
have
been
full
a
discussion of the yield sign on 45.
change in the statute from the weight of a yield sign to a stop sign.
We'll discuss that in item 3 thoroughly. Any other public comments? First item of the agenda is selection of social service administrator. We did interview 3 qualified candidates last week and took some notes. And so we said we would put off action until tonight. So is there any?
I make a motion that we hire Heather Deneen as the social service administrator, and from her temporary position to the permanent position.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Any discussion?
We will notify anybody else
Right.
that had applied
Right.
of what we're doing.
And we had good candidates, good interviews. But I personally felt Heather's done a great job. She sort of, she agreed to do it on a temporary basis, and certainly she's had a rigorous caseload since we hired her in September. And I think she, again, so we were lucky to have her, and as well as other people apply for the job, but especially knowing the person that you're about to hire can do the job well is a good advantage over hiring people that may appear to be good, but you don't really know how it's going to play out.
So I think we were fortunate to have
Three
several
good candidates
right,
to
several candidates to choose
interview.
from,
Yeah.
and we're choosing the one that appears to be the most qualified, or the most will be the best for the best position for the town. I'm not sure.
Right.
I think that's unfortunate.
Absolutely. Great. So,
So you'll notify Heather and...
well, first we have to, is there any more discussion? We have to vote and make it official. So any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Great, it's unanimous. So I will notify everybody that expressed an interest and thank them for that, as well as see Heather tomorrow in the office. Good. Kerma rate proposal, we, Barbara Herbst and I did have a visit from our town's insurance carrier, Kerma, and said because of our claims history and the fact they've had a good year or good several years as municipal insurer for Connecticut municipalities, that we will be seeing a slight rate decrease next year. So that's a rare bit of good news in the insurance world. So anyway, I'll get those exact numbers probably for our next meeting. We can plug them into the budget. But again, that was good to have that visit.
That's a very pleasant surprise to hear the word decrease today.
Decrease, yes.
Gordon, what kind of insurance is that?
That's workers' comp and liability, auto and property insurance.
Thank you.
Health insurance still will go up.
Now, does that include the library?
No, the library is a separate organization. Yield sign on Route 45. I did hear somewhat unexpectedly from the state DOT, and I'm not sure, did I pass on that announcement to
I
you?
believe so. That we did
Yeah,
get
that's
an
what I
announcement.
Yeah. So, do you have that with you, Michelle, or can you read that? Or
This is the one from.
that's from Heidi. But anyway, there was one from the state of Connecticut, and periodically we review state roads, and we had, as a result of citizen request years ago, put in a request to change the routes of the yield sign on Route 45 at the intersection of just above Route 7 to a stop sign. We did get a petition probably at least 10 years ago asking for the state to do that. At the time, it was the state's position that the yield sign had more authority than a stop sign. I didn't know what the engineering code said, but I think most people feel a yield is a temporary stop as opposed to a complete stop for a stop sign. But anyway, long and short of it is the state is willing to try or install a stop sign at that location. So we'll see how that all works out. We did get another request from Heidi Kearns, who had a different idea of stop sign better placed on the leg of the triangle that comes up from the south. Kent, coming up that way, sight line is better. I think the main reason and the main traffic issue at that sign is people that are coming down the hill with good momentum don't necessarily have the right of way to cut in front of people coming up Route 45 from Route 7. So you have people yielding, they look up the hill, they don't come to a complete stop, and there has been several near misses and one collision or two collisions there previously. So it seems like that's the most heavily traveled, and that's why people wanted to put in a stop sign there. Slow down the chances of crashing at there. It's sort of impractical to have people stop coming down the hill as opposed to going up the hill. So that was the consensus.
It's impossible, it's impractical to have them even yield coming down the hill.
Right. Yeah. Good you're going.
I mean, I think it's because they're coming down a very steep hill.
And that's the problem. If somebody is coming down the hill, good rate of speed, somebody else is yielding but not stopping, you have the opportunity for a collision.
Well, I happen to agree with Heidi's comment because I most often go south on 7 and make the left turn on 45. This time of the year, when all the leaves are down, you can see what's coming up on that south side, the tagline from 7 on the south end of the triangle. But most of the year you can't. You can't unless it's at night and you're looking at lights. But you can't see who's coming up. And so if you're coming in from the north side of that triangle, you can't see who's coming up from the south end of that triangle. That's what Heidi's talking about. And I agree with her.
The fact is, an inside stop sign, which is what they're proposing, an inside stop sign,
An inside stop sign.
is what the whole triangle in Cornwall Bridge is. Are inside stop signs where the person on the left, the person does have the right to cross in front of you, and the inside person has got to stop. That's what makes Cornwall Bridge relatively difficult in terms of understanding, but there is a precedent, and it's Cornwall Bridge, it's in Falls Village, it's on the other side of the bridge, and I think that this intersection is compounded by the steepness of the people coming down the hill. They will not be yielding. I think that's the reason the state is saying that. People coming down the hill, it's tough enough to stop when you get to the bottom. I think that point is probably the steepest part of the hill, right there.
Right, and you have to have some regulation of people crossing Route 45 on the northbound leg. There has to be some indication or some control of that traffic going up Route 45.
On the inside leg, a person going up on the outside leg wouldn't stop for any reason.
No, and on the left, if you're going up on the left side, the north side, when you get to that intersection, you can see cars coming down. But when you get to the top of the triangle, you can, at different times of the year, see anybody coming up that entered 45 from the south. That's what Heidi's talking about, and I agree with her. That's a difficult sight line. Not only because you're looking across your car, but because much of the year, with leaves, you can't see anything.
Are there trees there on that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes, there are. A lot of trees there.
In the inside of that triangle?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I do agree with Heidi and with Priscilla. It's a bad intersection.
Well, I think that it's taken us 10 years to get a new sign that was requested by the people who live there. At least we should try it out and see how it works. I think that's more prudent than this proposal.
But next time you go down there, you look, and
Right.
even with the leaves
Well, I know you
on.
got to work on it because you're looking downhill. But again, most of the traffic is on that north. Most of the traffic's going up the hill from Cornwall Bridge, not going up the hill from Kent.
So why wouldn't you put the stop sign where there's less traffic rather than where there's more traffic?
Because you have an issue of traffic coming down the hill and cutting, going down, or whatever. You have to regulate the intersection between the northbound and the downhill side of it. That's where we've had problems.
The issue is two sets of, if you're gonna have a collision, two vehicles traveling in the same direction may sideswipe each other. I agree, that's a possible problem. But if you're gonna hit somebody coming down the hill, it's gonna be somebody coming from Cornwall Bridge, and that'll be a head-on collision.
But you've got clear sight lines, you can see way up the hill.
Again, it was brought to this board 10 years ago. Try to put a stop sign there. It's ultimately the state decision. I think we should at least try to do what people ask us to do and what we've asked the state to try before we go and try something else. And ultimately, it's their decision at this point anyway. I mean, I'll be glad to look at it again, but I think that's what I wanted with them.
You know, if you just.
Again, we're not going to have
ask
a
the
big
town
debate
to do
about it.
that.
What?
You know, ask the DOT, if you would do that, I think that would be great. Meet with them and just see if they, when they think about it, if they really want to do it the way they've proposed.
I think that's what we're on record. That's what we were asked to do. That's what we proposed to do. And so now, because we get a letter, I'm not going to change. If we look at it again, I'll ask them to put a second stop sign coming up the hill from Kent or something. But I think right now this seemed to make the most sense when we walked it out there with their engineers.
Gordon, they're acting now, 19 years later?
Sometimes it takes a long time to get things done. I don't begin to, I mean, they also have different priorities. They have different people looking at things.
Nothing else triggered this?
No, it came out of the blue. So there you go. Okay. Next is Little Guild of St. Francis. The new director was going to come meet with us. She called up and said that they have a board meeting at the end of the month and they want to work on their proposals a little bit more before they go public with what they're thinking of doing. They are looking for a new home, hopefully in Cornwall. And I'm going to meet with them in the meantime to work on some proposed sites. Priscilla and some of the realtors have given them listings of land for sale on major town roads or major state roads in Cornwall. And again, I've expressed our board's interest in working with the Guild of relocating and staying in Cornwall. So they will make a presentation to us soon, as soon as they get their plans together. So that's the update from the Guild. We did get a letter from Sally Van Dorn, who again expressed an interesting issue that there are people in Cornwall that are listed in service by the Falls Village Post Office. I met with the Falls Village Postmaster, with John Van Dorn, several years ago, and they said they would consider it. Nothing much has happened other than people have become more GPS dependent, and it's become confusing for people trying to find Cornwall addresses in Falls Village, because that's the way, that's their postal address. So what I would do is check in with the people that are interested with this and and find out if what the reaction is from the Falls Village in West Cornwall postmasters.
So there's probably 24 homes,
Probably,
Yeah.
maybe
because
more.
it's Hot Boy Hill, Bradford Road, and that end of Town Street, I think, that we're talking about.
It's not, well, it's
Not
43.
43.
43 and it's part of 63
The
too.
dirt road there.
Yeah. Isn't
So they would be serviced, they would like to be serviced by the
West Cornwall, just to at least
Yeah.
get them in the same town as their
Mhm.
as their GPS shows. So, and again, it's probably up to the postal service. Last time we talked to them, they said that the West Cornwall route is longer than the Falls Village route, and so that
There
was
still is, but
probably still is.
Is there a second route in West Cornwall? There's two
Well,
routes
I
in West
think-
Cornwall, aren't there?
well, they go into Sharon. They go
Right.
across Route 7 and up Smith Hill and
Are
West
there-
Cornwall Road.
Are there two separate,
They use the 06796 zip code for about 30 houses that are physically in the town of Sharon.
right,
But yes, they have two routes out of West Cornwall.
yeah, so if they have, maybe they could shift some of them from
Right.
one route to the other route. Just as in, I wonder if,
I haven't heard anyone complain about Litchfield, but College Street and Flat Rocks, that area of the town, is
Right.
serviced by the Litchfield Post Office.
Correct.
I mean, it's a little town, we have 5 post offices that deliver mail.
Right.
Those 3 post offices.
Yeah. So anyway, at least we can do is to talk to postal authorities and see.
and the starting point would be the two postmasters?
Yeah. Because they said they were going to check on it. It seemed like, because the West Cornwall truck is up in that area, it wouldn't be huge amount of time, but it would, whatever it is, 10 minutes, it would be 10 minutes longer on that route. So however that gets figured out
Right.
we'll learn more about the issue for sure. Next we got, I think we all went up to the Northwestern Council of Governments Economic Summit up in Norfolk 2 weeks ago. Thought it was very interesting, the presentations there, mostly dealing with fiber optic cable, but other items of economic interest. We did get a letter from Brad Harding and Meg McMorrow, who brought up the news that apparently Sprint and Optimum are putting some small cell wireless hotspot emitters on the cable lines around town, and you can see them. They're fairly small, about that big, in their white plastic, look like a bread box. They're located on cable lines along Valley Road, and you go in most places. They're not necessarily towards houses, but it will increase some wireless coverage in town. It's not the same as fiber optic. Anyway, Brad and Meg were very concerned about the health impacts of 5G deployment if that happens, and wanted to have those concerns taken into the town plan of conservation development. So anyway, I forwarded their message on to people that are working on that plan. Anything else from the Economic Summit?
Came away with it, 5G is a lifetime away.
Right.
Here to see, and broadband, whatever that means, or fiber optic, not fiber optic, is the in any scenario, it's on any list in any scenario for economic development. That fiber optics is would be on any list of things that need to be done.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I came away with. You know, not,
Good. All right, any other thoughts on that? Next, Child Center budget. We did present our budget last week to the Board of Finance. We had a good, thorough meeting with them, discussed many topics. One topic I think came up was the Cornwall Child Center budget. People on the Board of Finance had heard that the Child Center was in need of more funding, but we had in our budget to flatline their request. I had not gotten the budget request from the finance office, and now that we went and looked for it, we found it, and they have asked for a $5,000 request to their budget. I think I circulated the letter that they wrote. I talked to Kate Ward, who's the chairman of the board, and reiterated the town's support for their organization, and would make a motion that we increase our budget request to the Board of Finance by $5,000 for the Child Center for the coming year budget.
is that a motion?
That's the motion.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Next on our agenda is West Cornwall septic letter. I reworked a little bit the letter that we talked about in our 2 meetings ago, or maybe it was our last meeting. We had promised to bring this to the sewer study group. They're meeting next week, so my hope would be that we would look at this, present something like this to that group, and then get something out to the citizens or the.
So if that group approves your letter, we'll then send out the letter.
Well, I think also if I would like to get their approval, but I think also it's a letter from the Board of Selectmen.
Mm-hmm.
So they're an advisory group, and if they say, for example, we should offer free septic to the people of West Cornwall, I don't think I'd support that. I think we have to have, I think the town's probably going to wind up paying most of the cost of installing the sewers, but I think the people that use it should pay for it as much as other people pay for a similar service in a similar town. So again, I have an open mind on most things, but I would like to hear what people have to say. And I think this is sort of the framework, having done the research of what other places have charged, do charge, and realizing there's great variation based on the age of systems, size of systems, and also this does say that this is a letter of interest, but it's not a binding contract. And again, once this gets, if this comes to pass, then the numbers will become more real, I would think. But at least you have to start somewhere, and I think that's what we're trying to do here. And again, Steve McDowell wants this to be done, and if we can get this back, what I had was actually a return date of April 1st, so if we put it out by the 19th, that gives 2 weeks for people to hear what's going on. We have another meeting in April. If Steve can get that information ahead of the April meeting, he can have more to say at the April meeting of the sewer group. Any thoughts on this?
The purpose of the letter is to survey the peoples in the areas that we think may be served, and to try and get some determination who's possibly interested.
Correct.
Based on the concept that the cost will be the average cost of a system throughout the 10 or 15 towns or 20 towns, whatever survey of towns that we've done gives us some idea what a typical system costs for the user, and that's kind of what we're presenting, that your fees, your annual fees will be about what a typical system would pay.
Now, is that sewer meeting next Tuesday? At
Yes, I
5?
believe so.
Yeah, 12.
Right. And again, we could send this out to all the, I mean, once Steve did his work, there's a core area that seems to be the most necessary, which is where a lot of commercial properties are that are constrained by the septic or lack of septic. So you're talking Main Street and Railroad Plaza, and we can decide to go beyond that for the survey. But if we have one person that wants it on one of the side roads and it's going to cost $500,000, it's probably going to be a decision to go with the core areas as opposed to servicing everybody just because we could. Obviously the cost is going to be somewhat, is going to be a big driver in the decision. So, I mean, that's one of the questions we have to think about is who does this all,
Who does it go to?
who does it go to?
Right. And how far up the main street do we go?
Yeah, I mean, the thought was from, I think from the health district, that once you get a couple houses up from the store, you have bigger lots that shouldn't have much of an issue.
So maybe go a couple of lots up from there then,
Yeah.
as far as to include those in those properties.
Right.
If the people want to.
Right, but at least for the survey,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going, obviously the store, the post office, the bookstore, those areas are underserved, so it wouldn't be a big deal to go slightly up the road, but we're not going up to Dibble Hill or anything.
Right,
We're not looking for
Yeah.
large expanse. Are there any thoughts on this draft?
I like the draft, except for the split infinitive.
Right, wow. Split infinitive, that's the first time I've heard that in a long time.
I sent it
Thank-
back to Joyce and I said, please get rid of the split infinitive. The
I
old
like
school teacher was
Thank you
like
very much for bringing this up to date. And we're talking about April 1st, not April 11th.
So we're talking about sending this out this week or sometime next week?
After our meeting on the 19th, we send it on the 19th.
I believe it's the 12th.
Our
It was
meeting-
next Tuesday.
Well, that's the study group, so we can hear what they have to say on the 12th, and then we meet again the following Tuesday.
Yeah, we meet the
And that would
19th.
give the respondents
Mhm.
2 weeks to respond. After that, and still get us information by the 1st. But if you give it a month, then we might get less of a response. That makes sense, Joyce?
So you're saying April 1st instead of April
11th. Yeah, so we get things there.
Sounds good.
Okay, so anyway, we will bring this to the sewer study group.
Gordon, you had said that you were gonna send that draft to the committee members before the septic meeting, so they could read it and come with
Sure.
their comments.
Okay. Yep, we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Next is legislation. It's been a busy session following the governor's budget proposals. There's been a lot of bills introduced in the Senate and in the legislature. There was a big hearing in Hartford last Friday, which I did not go to, but there were two bills that I wrote testimony for. One was about transferring the part of the teacher pensions to the municipalities. The second one was a mandatory school consolidation into districts of 2,000 students. So I did write the Education Committee, and I met with Representative Maria Horn on these two issues and other bills that have come up, expressing concern that about the budgetary impact of the teacher pensions, which the towns had nothing to do with crafting that, and actually the state told their bondholders that they were going to pay for the pension programs. So, and also the mandatory consolidation I felt was impractical, as we already are part of a regional school system here. It does not have 2,000 students, but to consolidate with another school district would just increase time on the bus for the students, which I think would not be helpful. And I think a lot of towns in this area feel the same way, that we are open to ways to cooperate, but a arbitrary order for consolidation is not well received. So those are two issues that have, a lively hearing. There was a lot of concerns expressed, and we'll see where those two go. Another issue that came up was a proposal to change the way towns, municipalities assess and tax property, tax collections, and it would basically transition from a local activity to a regional activity of regions of sizes. There'd be 5 regions in the state, so presently there are 9 council of governments, so these would be districts that are even bigger than the council of governments. And I have great concern from a cost standpoint, because I think a lot of these small towns run their reevaluation of and taxation departments very efficiently. A lot of times these are part-time people. They don't have, they do not have huge pension benefits, health benefits. So whoever is running these regionally will have more, will be more expensive positions. Plus, I think having our taxpayers go to an experience similar to the DMV to do their tax collecting and appeals would not be well received. And I think it's, we deal with people that get a $9 refund for their car tax, which is fine. But again, I don't see this needs to be a regional priority, and may may be a way to increase state control over local taxation. And I think there's actually bills to eliminate the car tax or redistribute the car tax, collect the car tax locally, but distribute it to other municipalities under the name of revenue sharing to other places. So I think we have to be very vigilant on keeping control of our revenues, because we only have, as I said in my pension letter, the towns by law only really have one way to finance their operations, and that's through local property taxes. The state has a bunch of different taxes they can use, and if they start acquiring some of our revenue streams, that's only going to make the taxes here go up.
Any of our taxing authority is given to us by the state itself. We, the town of Cornwall, can't choose to start taxing something because we think that would be a good source.
Right. We can't, for example, put in a sales tax without the permission.
Right.
Or raise the taxes on real estate without their permission. They decide they tell us to jump, we say how high or whatever. So anyway, the council of governments and the selectmen are watching all these things. We did get a letter from Joanne Watershed concerned about HR 5273, which would require, there's a letter here, did you get the letter? It says it would require, as of right, multifamily housing. I actually looked this up online, and although I share concerns about mandates, this particular bill applies to areas within a half mile of fixed route transit stops, of which we don't have any in Cornwall, and there's none in Goshen. This is basically a organized bus route, which they have in larger places than we have. All of our transit we have here at Isle of Ride are on request transit, and the closest fixed transit routes run between Winsted and Torrington. So I don't feel this particular bill has bearing on the town. I think that there is a push to increase multifamily housing in towns, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, as long as it's done. It's one of the things that our study group on housing is looking at in town, and may come up with a recommendation which might be timely if the state is considering mandating that, although a lot of mandates get pushed back. One thing that did come here, which I'm not sure you saw copies of, but I have some little notes on there that I also gave to Maria Horn. This is the Council of Economic Connecticut Economic Resource Center, and they do a town profile every year, and it talks about demographics, economics, education, government, housing, real estate, labor force, quality of life, crime, disengaged youth, distance to major cities. So it's interesting. I mean, not that it's not everything is absolutely correct, but a couple things that do pop out is that the average income in Cornwall, which you can see under demographics, which is medium HH Inc., is medium household income in Cornwall is $74,000 a year. The county average is $73,000 a year. and the state average is $71,000 a year. So statistically, we're not that much different in the income demographic. You can see that our population, no surprise, is quite a bit older than in the 65 category than the state average, and it's a bit, and quite a bit under, almost half of the state demographic between 25 and 44. But if you look at the second page, we look at the average housing price, median price, and I'm not sure what year this is for, but I think it's 2017. The average housing price is $420,000, which is almost double the county average of $249,000 and the state average of $269,000. So the problem is, on an average income, it's very hard for people to afford a $420,000 house in Cornwall. I think most people accept that. So you may have to do things somewhat differently and allow more rental units, more multifamily housing, other housing options than just a straight standard house on 5 acres. So anyway, plenty of data coming out, plenty of legislation, plenty to watch. And we'll stay, I'm sure. I did talk to Rick Lynn today to get some information. He said that at the Council of Governments, they have invited the governor, lieutenant governor, chief of staff to come to a meeting. So there will be a chance to hear from state officials within the next month. So that will be interesting.
Are they coming to a COG meeting?
Well, they've been
Especially
invited. They haven't. The way things go, they probably will have to have a special meeting of the COG, which I'll let people know when that is, just because I'm sure their schedules are tight. Again, the governor was, I think he was the first sitting governor that actually come to Litchfield County COG meetings ever. So already he's one ahead of his predecessors, so that's good. So it's obviously things are getting tougher now.
He knows this is part of the state.
He knows it's part of the state.
Yeah, that's
Very encouraging. Where this all, whether he's able to come out this time or sends an assistant or something is to be seen. Anything else on legislation? Any public comments?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for the additional research you did on that bill about the applying only to the transit locations within a certain distance. But I think the bill is indicative of the state's general attitude towards overreach and controlling things and taking power away from our local planning and zoning boards. So I'm glad that you're really keeping an eye on that. And I would also point out in the figures that you read about average home prices and how they're so much higher in Cornwall, I think a median number would be more meaningful because we have multi-million-dollar properties in Cornwall that you probably don't have in Torrington. So your average tends to be more of what most of those houses cost, where the average here can be very misleading based on some very high-priced items that cause that average to go way up.
That 420 number is the median price.
Well, you
It's
said
not the
average.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I misspoke, but it is the median price. And there are copies of this.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
has more meaning. I
Okay.
also had a question about the child care center budget, since $5,000 is a substantial sum compared to all the amounts of money that you give to the other organizations in town. Why did they need that much more money this year? Did they have more kids or did they raise less money?
I think what they found was that they actually had some less kids, so they had less income coming in, they had a fairly significant drop of students, and so they had less revenue coming in, and they wanted to maintain their level of program.
But considering the amount of money that you give to all the other nonprofits
Right.
in town, they're now getting a big, how much were they getting before?
40, now they're getting 45. Yeah.
Is anybody else getting that big an increase?
The library gets a little bit more than that.
But they're not getting an increase, they're getting the
Yes,
same
they
amount
are
as last
actually.
year?
No,
They
they're
get a
getting
$5,000.
they're getting a $5,000 increase also.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other public comments?
And could I ask what Heather's
Sure.
last name is?
Heather's last name is Deneen.
D-I-N-N-E-E.
D-I-N, two E's and another N.
Oh, only one, okay.
How many N's?
D-I-N-E-E-N.
Okay.
I think that's
And her-
right. I think that's right.
Two N's in the middle.
And her,
D-I-N-N-E-E.
What?
Her title.
Is social service
two N's in
director.
D-I-N.
And she's also our municipal agent,
D-I-N-N.
elderly agent or
I don't
something like
think
that.
No, it's one in.
One N.
just one N is an E.
D-I-N-E-E-N.
Right.
Okay, and municipal agent.
Let's look it up, let's get it right. I think it might even be different than her
being
parents.
two N's in the middle, I seem to remember. It's a funny spelling, it isn't what you think it would be.
It isn't what you think it would be. But we won't make that the headline.
Have you bet it in the town bracket?
Town clerk.
I have two ends here.
Two N's?
Let's get it.
Two N's in the middle?
That's what I think I remember from.
Just looking it
What do
up.
you got, Joyce?
Right.
Two N's.
D-I-N-N-E-E.
Yeah, D-I-N-N.
I was wrong on that one.
Well, that's my
Oh, it's
question.
on Heather's too.
You're welcome.
Even better.
Yeah, it's on Heather's. Yeah, perfect.
Well, she wrote it down.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that
Thank you for checking.
That's pretty much it, other than paying bills.
Thank you.